Hello and welcome to the SADF podcast series, where we delve into the pressing issues of our time. Today's episode focuses on energy politics and sustainable future, and our context is Bangladesh. I'm Rayhan Rashid, your host, and we have an important discussion ahead, so please stay tuned. As you know, energy security, economic growth, sustainability, these are some of the central issues to global discourse, and Bangladesh is no exception. As the country, Bangladesh navigates its way through all these factors, such as geopolitical influences, diversification of energy, and policy reforms, are all going to be very crucial in shaping the country's future. So, to unpack these complexities, I'm delighted to welcome back two of our very distinguished guests, Amit Bhandari and Paulo Casaca. Let me introduce you. Amit Bhandari, he is an energy expert with nearly 2 decades of experience in public policy research and financial analysis. He is also a senior fellow of Gateway House, which is a foreign policy think tank in India. And Paulo Casaca, he is a former member of the European Parliament and also of the national and regional parliaments of Azores. And Paulo is the founder and executive director of South Asia Democratic Forum, from where we are hosting this podcast from. So, Amit, so Paulo, it's great to have you both on the podcast again. Welcome back. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Ryan.
Great to be here.
Good to have you. So, just so that we can delve into much deeper issues, my first question it is for Amit. Amit, can you tell us a little bit about Bangladesh's energy landscape,
So,
its energy mix, just so that our viewers get a context?
yeah. So I'll try to contrast Bangladesh with India also, because both of these countries are at a similar level of development and similar income levels as well. So in India, we get most of our electricity from coal, about 70% of it, and with hydropower, nuclear, renewables, and everything else accounting for the remainder. In Bangladesh, I think close to 50% of the electricity comes from natural gas, with coal accounting for a small percent, I think not more than 15 or 20%. And most of this coal capacity has come up in the last maybe 5 or 10 years. Liquid petroleum fuels, which is diesel, furnace oil, that also accounts for a substantial share. And apart from that, Bangladesh will be commissioning a nuclear power plant, I think, in the next year or so. So I think that single plant in Bangladesh's context would also mean about 8 to 10% energy from nuclear power. Now, the issue here is that, so there are two or three issues here. First is that Bangladesh initially relied on natural gas for electricity because most,
Before that,
yeah,
the data you just mentioned, Amit, they're from, can I safely assume that they are from International Energy Agency, IEA?
this is IEA and also Bangladesh's economic survey. And I may be off the percentages by a couple of points, but by and
We're
large,
fine
it is
with that.
correct.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Sorry to interrupt you.
not a problem. So the issue is that Bangladesh historically had natural gas reserves. These reserves were used for generating electricity. There are a couple of issues. One, the gas reserves are running out. Obviously, Bangladesh is geographically small. I doubt it will find large untapped gas fields in a big way. Increasingly, Bangladesh has to rely on imports of natural gas, which is LNG. And what we have seen in the last 4 or 5 years is that the LNG market actually has gone completely out of whack. In the aftermath of the Ukraine war, I think LNG prices went up to $45-50 a unit. And that really made LNG unaffordable for countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan in the winter of 2022. I understand there were gas shortages across the board, looking at going by media reports. So essentially, Bangladesh has an energy mix which is very different from other countries at that level of income. Second, it is relying on a fuel which is increasingly subject to geopolitics. Natural gas was subject to this kind of action in the last few years. European countries stopped buying gas from Russia after the Ukraine conflict, turned to the LNG market, and in turn, existing LNG customers got hurt. So this dependence is something which is going to be an area of concern for Bangladesh.
Because for a growing country, which is rapidly growing, it was at that time, even the
Yes.
time you mentioned. Yeah, it is. So the supply, safe supply, affordable supply of LNG, it was very integral to the
Yes.
economic development.
So yeah, I would say that when I talk about energy security, I talk of reliable supplies at an affordable price. And I think in
That's a
Bangladesh,
good definition.
Yeah.
That's a good definition. Yeah.
So I think in case of Bangladesh, LNG supply has not really been affordable, and because of which it has also become unreliable.
I see. No, that thank you very much, Amit. That's a very good overview. I think my next question I'd go to the issue of energy politics. I think Paulo would be the best person. Paulo, what is your take on energy politics and how it impacts Bangladesh's energy security?
Well, thank you very much for moderating this very interesting debate,
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Paulo.
Ryan. But above all, a very, very big thanks to Amit. Gateway House India is a very important think tank that we are very honored to be cooperating with. I think that we would like very much to strengthen our relations because India has been for many decades the crucial country in the future of democracy and humanity and many other things. And therefore, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you. Well, Ryan, allow me just to make a small addition to what you said, because I did found and develop a company, a consulting company called Land and Energy Sustainable Systems during several years. And this was exactly a company that was trying to look at systems. You know, systems do not only work on energy, but are looking on land, water, air to assess sustainability. And within
And all these are very much interlinked.
Absolutely. I think that, the crux of the matter is that if you look at the environmental discourse of 50, 60 years ago, it was always holistic. I mean, everything was together. And if you look at now, it's very monofunctional. Climate change, nothing else. And as if climate would not be such a complex issue as it is. It is the most of the complex of the issues. This drift has been, in my opinion, very pernicious because it is not allowing us to understand what's going on. And now, coming back to politics, we must keep, hope and future, on our limelight. There have been very recent, 2025 positions and declarations from the United States diplomacy in Bangladesh that I think we have to follow. One of them was reminding that the previous democratic government of Bangladesh,
You mean the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's regime?
Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's regime had been doing a very good work during the last 5 years, quote, American embassy, on regarding renewable energy, and that there was a plan for having 2040 100% renewable energy in Bangladesh, and that they were sticking for it. And actually, they have a clip that they put on air. The embassy of Bangladesh, the charge d'affaires that is now in charge, that is precious clip because in over 2 minutes, American academics, say exactly what I've been thinking on the issue for a very long time. The most pressing question in Bangladesh, as well as in many other places in South Asia, but I mean, Bangladesh is perhaps the most obvious and most clear, is that you have a problem with air pollution. Well, water pollution as well. We are not speaking about that, but the air pollution that is aggressing and curtailing the lives of Bangladeshis. The same happens in Delhi, by the way, but not discussing Delhi right now. Well, Dhaka. Dhaka is a catastrophe from the point of view of air quality. So this problem is tremendous. Of course, gas, there is a rationality for using gas, because gas, actually liquefied natural gas,
LNG.
from the point of view of emissions, from the point of view of the accounting of the global warming, is the worst of the solutions. Let's be very clear. This has been hidden, but it's the worst. It's worse than coal. Well, but not from the point of view of particles. It does, in terms of air quality, does have a less polluting effect than coal. And I think this is the rationality that has been for decades behind the actions of Bangladesh authorities. And there is a logic for it. Okay, But, well, sustainability means a lot of things. Actually, the ability to pay for it. I wonder who is paying the bill, because the, the bill, the new government is bankrupting the country. Is ruining the country from a lot of perspectives, but also financially. And so it has been apparent that Indian suppliers of coal have not been properly paid. And of course, this is a problem. And I just wonder what is happening with the Qatari and the Americans. But
Yes, that is where actually, Paulo, I was hoping to hear more from you.
exactly.
The geopolitics of it in terms of supply, in terms of security, how, and Bangladesh is in the crossroads.
Absolutely. I made a very deep analysis and study that is published in French. It is available in the net in the School of Economic War in Paris regarding Mozambique and how Qatar actually destabilized Mozambique so as Mozambique not to be competing in a market with gas exactly when Qatar intended to multiply its supplies of gas to the general market,
So the
especially.
period you were referring at that time, Qatar was kind of holding the key of LNG
No,
supply
Qatar
for
is the
Mozambique at
most
least.
important. Qatar is the most important. Why? Well, if you look at the United States, the Qatari investment in the crucial infrastructure of the United States enormous. They are actually the most important actor in LNG in the United States. This has to be understood. You think that there are things that are American, but they are actually going through America, but they're not really American.
So
We have
you
to
you
remind.
refer to the Mozambique situation, but the
Absolutely.
the Qatar influence on Bangladesh. What exactly? What?
It's Bangladesh and everywhere in the world, of course, because there is, as you mentioned in the beginning, the invasion, the aggression of Russia to Europe on Ukraine
Obviously,
made it came at the same time. Well, was it coincidence or might have been? I'm not a conspirationist, and so I have no proof. I have no idea that
none
that
of us are here.
that
I think we're
the Qatari establishment could know what was going to happen. So this had a tremendous impact. Well, it's not true that Europe is not buying gas. It is. It is still buying gas, but it tried to diminish very much the gas that it is buying. And then, we have enormous reserves in Europe, especially in the Netherlands. It's flushed with gas. But the Dutch don't want to extract it for a simple reason, because the extraction of gas has some earthquake impact. The neighbors didn't want it, and so they are just not touching them. So, but they are there. Well, but just these are things that most of the people ignore. But anyway, we can see that there was a big inroad of Qatar in Bangladesh during Sheikh Hasina's time. It was not so recent. That made Bangladesh sign a 15 years old contract. Bangladesh, the most important company that supplies gas in Bangladesh. What the name of it is escaping me now, but this company signed the supplier of gas and made of Qatar the reference supplier. Oh, and the American ambassador, the previous American ambassador that
Mr.
left
P,
his
Mr.
job, yes, Mr. Peter Haas, that left his job in the beginning of July last year, went immediately to work to this company. Oh, well, such a coincidence that, and an obvious conflicts of interests, because how can you go from America to Qatar dominated interests working? It's really not possible.
What
That's
you're referring, Paulo, that is the geopolitical stake
mm,
here and Qatar's involvement. I'm just curious because over the period of say last 15 years, we have seen not just geopolitical intervention, but we have seen some Qatari entities getting involved in an indirect way, I would say, in Bangladeshi politics as well. Through the media Al Jazeera, which is state funded. Could there be a connection?
you see.
Because the coverage of Al Jazeera on Bangladesh in the last 15 years, often it had been very biased, I would say, and problematic. And do you think it was
Yeah,
some kind of
yeah.
it was
I
aiming? Yeah,
obviously
please.
Obviously, like in many other places, Qatar is working as a sort of international monetary fund for the global jihadi movement. And they have been very, very effective. I say that for many years, that in South Asia, that's ABC strategy, which was Afghanistan, done. They done it. They infiltrated the American mechanisms of decision, and they done it. They got Afghanistan. Well, afterwards, the Taliban have not been playing as they expected, but they done. 3 years ago, they done it in Afghanistan. And then it was Bangladesh. It's ABC. I said, it's going to be Bangladesh. I said to the authorities of Bangladesh, you are going to be next. I was not really believed. The reality is there. And then it's Kashmir. In Portuguese, Kashmir is with a C, not with a K. So it's the ABC strategy. I have been saying that for ages. For me, it's clear. And it's, Qatar, it's such a tiny country, and whenever I speak about it, everybody says, come on, you are kidding. Such a tiny country. How can you say that this is doing so much? Well, of course, it is a tiny country, but it's by far the richest per capita of citizens in the world, and with an enormous leverage. And fundamentally, it is working as a sort of ecumenic Islamist power. I mean, it's the officially only Wahhabist country. People tend to forget that, because Mohammed bin Salman dissociated Saudi Arabia from Wahhabism years ago.
Yes.
It's Qatar, Wahhabism. But not only Wahhabism, it's the Muslim Brotherhood. Al Jazeera has been, in Arabic, was promoting for years.
So there is a connection between energy and international terrorism.
There has been always, from the 70s, in 73, ages ago, the main leverage of the war of Muslim countries in the Middle East was oil, and now it's shifted from oil to gas, because gas is really much more important and easier, and has a lot of advantages. I mean, we are not going to speak about it now because it's a complex
That
issue.
that I think we should have a discussion, a longer discussion on that, Paulo, one of these days. Thank you. That was great, Amit.
Mhm.
So in Bangladesh, you mentioned like the energy. Well, let's talk about energy independence and how import dependency work. So as in case of Bangladesh, there is growing energy demands, and Bangladesh increasingly now relies on imported LNG, coal, and electricity, as well as you highlighted the energy mix in Bangladesh. So
Yes.
do you see a realistic pathway for the country to achieve energy independence? Or will external reliance continue to dominate? I don't know for how long.
No, no, fair enough. So let me again use an India analogy here. Uh, you know, uh, Historically, every time, this is not in the last decade or so, but historically, whenever the price of oil would go up, there would be a financial crisis in India. And our economic reforms started in 1991-92 when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and the price of oil went to $40. And the thing is, the international price of oil used to be a major issue in India. And I remember growing up at a time when we used to use the word precious foreign exchange. And I haven't
Precious,
heard
yes.
that term being used in the last 20 odd years. So the idea is that as long as there is enough money to pay for the energy that you are importing, it's not really a problem where you get it from. But you really need to rely on things which are geographically dispersed and not be over dependent on a single buyer, single seller. The oil market globally is very well diversified. The largest supplier, Saudi Arabia, doesn't account for maybe more than 10-15% of the market. And we have seen that this business has functioned very well in the last 70 odd years since the end of the World War II. Coal also is a fairly well diversified supply chain. You can get it from multiple sources. Prices are not so much of an issue. So in Bangladesh's case, affordability is an issue. So gas and oil therefore get on the expensive side, one. Two, natural gas is a highly concentrated market. Just three players account for, I think, US, Australia, and Qatar probably account for 75 or 80% of the global LNG trade. So if you're looking at a market which is that concentrated, you are also looking for at a product where prices can and will fluctuate wildly. So in a way, Bangladesh has taken a wrong bet on the energy on electricity generation. So you will always depend on imported fuel. That is something you can take as an
Mhm.
assured. What
Can
fuel
you
is it going to be?
can you explain a bit? Wrong bet.
So I would say that any energy that you will import energy, that is a given. What form will it be? It should be ideally something a which is affordable, commensurate with your level of development, two, which is also diversified enough, which comes from multiple sources, so that you don't have very wild price fluctuations.
I
uh,
see.
to give an example, in 2019 there was a very high profile attack on Saudi Aramco, allegedly by drones backed by Iran. The price of oil spiked up. It spiked up for 6 hours. I think in by the end of the day it was back to where it was before the attack, and in a week Aramco had restored production. So you are looking at an extremely robust supply chain over there. This is not the case with natural gas at this point of time. So I would say that makes it a kind of a wrong bet. Concentrated fuel coming from a few suppliers, and in general, even in the normal times, it's way more expensive than what you can afford. So I this is an old calculation that I have.
So basically, the policy should look at having more options, or in other words, not keeping all your eggs in one basket.
I would say that, and so essentially, Bangladesh needs to get less electricity from gas and from oil as well. So more energy can come from nuclear power. It will have to come from coal for some time to come. We may not like it, but it's going to happen.
So that's one way of becoming ensuring energy independence. But for how long? I'll come to that question later. Before that, Paulo, you were aware that you just mentioned Mr. Peter Haas, something like a, what do we call it? I think there is a term, revolving mirror. Revolving door, I
The
see. That's
revolving
the
door,
thing.
yeah, absolutely.
Revolving door. So he got appointed another high profile appointment at Accelerate Energy. That's a company
Exactly.
that's just in Bangladesh that supplies LNG. It's an LNG terminal. So how do you see that?
Yeah, well, it's very symbolic of a lot of things that now are appearing after the Trump administration decided to end U.S. aid and to reveal what U.S. aid has been up to. And of course, that
For clarity, his appointment took place before Mr. Trump took over power.
you mean no, no,
I mean,
he ended.
the appointment as a CEO of Mr. Peter Haas.
Absolutely, no, it happened in July. He is no, I don't
Yeah,
think.
back in July.
I'm not sure if he's a CEO. He is
CEO
what
or head or something. Yeah,
he's
like
a
I
senior
was
advisor. Senior advisor. He went immediately
I may
in
be wrong.
July.
Thanks for
Yeah,
correcting me.
that's what
Yes.
I read in the press itself.
Basically, he is in charge of Bangladeshi operations in some way at the moment.
Well, it was in the first pages of every press, certainly presented him that way. And of course, this is, in my opinion, it's the revolving door. It's a conflict of interests, especially because was the most outspoken critic of Sheikh Hasina. That was terrible. And
So it's
trust me,
not a
now,
coincidence at all.
no, I don't think it's a coincidence. And I think that with this US edge of evil, we are seeing that there was a strategy that was to destroy Bangladesh. That's what it is. And of course, then, of course, say, oh, it's India that is. Of course, India is the number one victim of this external victim. I mean, the number one victim are obviously the Bangladeshi people. But India is around, and India knows how it is, because Bangladesh was a hotbed of all sorts of terrorist groups that destabilized, make life impossible everywhere in India before Sheikh Hasina took power. And of course, that's important for India. And India is very much worried with it. But of course, no, it's a conspiracy. And Sheikh Hasina, she is a puppet of India. A lot of nonsense that has been propelled by this disinformation machine that is now encompassing, America, goes through America, but it's actually coming out of the financial mammoth of the jihadism and Qatar in the first place. Not only Qatar, Iran is very important there, but Qatar is really the most significant. Okay,
I'm just
that's the political
wondering.
part. Ryan, I would
Sorry,
like to
please
go
go
to
ahead.
the what is important to me, because we will have time to discuss politics. The issue of sustainability, as I understand it, renewability. With all due respect, I do have a different opinion. I mean, I think that the most obvious short-term solution for the problem would be hydropower, especially from Nepal. Nepal potential is very big. Now we have a big problem, because
Because that is probably not an option for Bangladesh.
no, it is. It is.
Hydropower.
No, it is. No, not within. There is potential of hydropower according to the studies I read in Bangladesh. I don't think
Within Bangladesh?
within. I read it.
Okay.
I read it. But I don't think it's a very big potential. I don't think this is
Because
the
there
solution.
there is already one like a decades old hydropower project in Bangladesh, in Kaptai. Yeah, that is one.
Okay, no, I know that there is. Okay, but Nepal, that was the
Oh, I
obvious issue.
see.
But now we have a very
So
big
you're talking
complication.
about electricity import in that case.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, because you are importing coal or gas or oil or whatever, of course. But that's a regional thing that would make sense. And of course, would have to. India is always the main player, not only because it is in the
There
middle,
are more than
but
one players, more than two
but
players actually.
India has to be the major player in whatever. But of course, now we have China disturbing completely the hydropolitics of the Indo-Kush Himalayan complex. And what is going to result of this? I do not know. I don't think that we have studies on this, but this is very worrying. I wrote about it, a study 5 years ago on this, and without looking at it seriously, I mean, I don't think we will get to conclusions. Okay.
In
So,
fact, in our last podcast, we had another when Amit was here,
yeah.
we were discussing like cross-border electricity supply, and we were just chatting, Amit and I, and when it is an issue of cross-border transfer of electricity, a lot of issues are involved, and particularly you have to have a stable regional stability,
Absolutely. That's
diplomatic good ties. Those are fundamental, and that scenario is getting bleaker by the day. And
I'm sorry, Ryan. I have to interrupt you because
no,
of
no, no, please
course
feel free, we are
because
having a
of
chat.
course with a government like that is promoting terrorism by the day,
Like that, by mean you mean the current one, the current one.
nothing is possible. All
Yeah.
of this supposes that you will have some sort of democratic, responsible government in Bangladesh. But that's in this scenario that we have to speak of. Otherwise, we won't speak of nothing else. So let me see the issue of renewability because it's true that within South Asia, Bangladesh is not particularly suited for a lot of the renewable alternatives. You get geothermal. I don't know of any study
Geothermal,
on
I
geothermal
haven't
energy,
seen it. Yeah.
but I know geothermal energy, even in countries that have no particular conditions like Sweden, it works very well. But in Bangladesh, it's very doubtful. Why? Because you dig a hole and you are in water, salty water, but you are in water. I don't think, I never saw a study, I don't think. Okay. Sun and wind. Well, it's true. It's not, within South Asia, Bangladesh is not very well placed, because you have a lot of clouds, It's not like you are not in Balochistan, So it's not the same thing. It's not so good. But read.
But Bangladesh has a just for argument's sake. Well, sun, we know that it is very much tied to land,
No,
which
it's not.
Bangladesh doesn't have a lot.
No. That's a mistake. I've been saying that for a long, long time. And now you are seeing the biggest case in California. Well, excluding China, because China is now the biggest in everything, but excluding China, one of the biggest solar panel central that is in the border between California and Nevada. It just went bankrupted. Why did it go bankrupted? Well, because it's much more obvious to do it in home, to use decentralized solar systems with panels. And actually, in the future, it's not going to be with panels, it's going to be embedded in the materials of the houses. I mean, we are making futurology. Yes, of course, we are. But we have to do it. We have to think about the future, not about the
Let
past.
me, I just want to hear what Amit thinks on that, the issue of land, like that being taxed by solar energy. Paulo, obviously, he has a different solution. I think Paulo is referring to more advanced technologies, like to make them
Absolutely.
embedded. Amit, what do you think?
Yeah, so my sense is that solar power requires enormous amounts of land. I think historically it used to be I think 2 or 3 acres for 1 megawatt. That efficiency has probably improved, but
Just for the record, Bangladesh's total land mass is 55,000
Yeah.
acres.
So that is one. And in India, I think the general trend has been to try and install solar panels and plants in states which are arid and which don't have forest cover or are not agricultural. I think in Bangladesh, which is primarily a riverine delta, that's going to be really difficult. So by and large, I don't think solar power is really, unless there are some dramatic improvements in technology, not just of generation, but also of storage. I think solar is not really going to answer your problems because you will still require the other forms of energy for the 17, 18 hours when the sun doesn't shine. And I think
So it even with renewables, it has to be diversified. So we get two different opinions, two different approaches to it.
Absolutely different,
What about what about
No, 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 no. Well, wind is not the most important, but wind is also the same thing because the technologies are developing very much to having the sort of wind captures that are not the sort of turbines, these big things. We are evolving to have the small ones. But regarding the solar, which is not, I mean, this is not futurology. This is doing. I call your attention. I just told you. I mean, you should really look at the case because it's being done now. It's on the front pages of the newspapers in the United States. The biggest solar energy farm is going bankrupt between California and Nevada. And
Nevada?
why is it going to be bankrupt? Because the new technologies that do not require space. No, I mean, I think this is completely,
So they didn't adapt to new
they
technology.
did not. I mean, and this is desert over there. I don't know if you ever been there. It's completely desert. It could be Balochistan or whatever. It's really desert, but still they could not compete with the solar panels installed in the houses in California. And the analysis is there, and it's very recent, and it really shakes a lot of things that people believed in. I mean, I've been saying that for a very, very long time. Actually, I did experience in my over 20 years ago,
No, no, it's all right.
in my farm exactly the sort of solar panel technology that would answer this sort of thing. Space is a thing of the past. This thing of making big surfaces in the desert, it's a thing of the past. It's not going that way, the technology. Yes, you are right. We are not there. No, we are not there. The solar panels are not a good answer because you have to install them, you have to put them in front, you have to
And then
double.
maintenance.
Well, the maintenance is no big deal. The batteries is a big deal. I have this experience. I have solar panels for 25 years. The first ones I had in my farm, and I didn't touch them. They are the same. I did not even wash them or whatever, and they work very fine.
The ones you installed, they use technology 25 years old. So
Absolutely. But even
so
the new ones
the
are much
modern
better.
solar panels are
Yeah,
much more efficient in that sense.
yeah. But the
So
most important
you
is
you, you
batteries.
need to upgrade it in the every few years.
No, no, no.
Well, let's move on from that one. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we
but
have a
this is the issue. The issue is that the future of solar energy and wind as well, is to have ingrained in the materials of the houses ways of absorbing energy. That's the way we are dealing with, and we have to think about the future, not about the past, because this is an error. It's like the European institutions were made on coal. The first was coal. Exactly when coal was vanishing. I think coal is not the solution, not because of anything else, but because of the health of the people. I mean, look at the numbers of people that are suffering from bad quality of the air in Dhaka. Well, Delhi is nearly the same thing. Well, not to speak about Karachi, disaster. So this is
I get
tremendously
your point.
important.
I get your point, Paulo.
Yeah.
Amit, Paulo made some very interesting point, like the advances made in the technology, in particularly the new technologies are more efficient, and there are so many options, and I would assume that they would cost more in that case. And Amit, what is your take? Is it like how viable? Like because that is also tied with the very capacity of economic capacity of a country.
I would say that solar is a very diffused form of energy. That is a fact. And no matter the amount of efficiency you get out of it, it is still going to remain very diffused. So there is a physical barrier on how much electricity you can get from a certain amount of land. That is one. Second is that yeah, we require, of course, batteries to store solar power. That is another dependence. And again, batteries are a very inefficient way of storing energy. Lithium carries much less energy compared to carbon. And I think maybe about a lithium battery carries about 1% of the energy of a similar mass of, let's say, diesel or petrol. So we are, and again, there are issues about availability of many of these minerals, which to my mind, are not fully sorted at this point of time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Just because we're talking about renewals, I think just for the sake of our viewers, just to mention that Bangladesh, like at least during the previous regime, it used to be a leader in the field of climate, particularly mobilizing the global south, southern countries. That was one thing, and the second thing is I'd like to mention is during the previous regime, the past regime government, they did incentivize different forms of renewables, and we were actually I do not know what kind of studies were behind those. I haven't got the opportunity before this podcast to look into them, but there were the country was advancing towards that, like in at least investing in it, incentivizing renewables. So that is one thing. But let's move on to more very interesting topics, and I was actually waiting to hear from you. Energy poverty and energy paradox. You know, there is a thing called energy poverty, which many argue which is a root cause of poverty itself. And in Bangladesh and like many other countries, particularly in the developing spectrum, energy poverty is an issue. But then there is also the issue of energy paradox, like more growth, more energy demand, and then again more pressure, like energy equals growth and wealth equals freedom. So it goes on. It's kind of a progressive cycle. So where does, like, everything we are forecasting in Bangladesh or in the context of Bangladesh, we're talking about present. What about the future? In order for that to be, use the word sustainable, because you need energy to accelerate your growth. The once the country is growing economically, then you have more energy demand. So the goalpost shifts every time. So what kind of policy do we need? Like, how far a country like Bangladesh should look into the future?
So shall I go first?
Please go ahead.
So
Anyway.
look, my sense is that if for your energy infrastructure to work properly, I think one of the things you will have to deal with is the whole issue of energy subsidies. And so I made the point earlier in the podcast about Bangladesh basing its
Energy
electricity grid
subsidy, which
on,
which the Bretton Woods institutions do not like for countries like
which is
Bangladesh.
right. But leave aside Bretton Woods, these subsidies do cause severe problems. So for example, Bangladesh originally based its power grid on natural gas, and this gas was really sold domestically at a very low price, leading to creation of further capacity based on natural gas. And now you have a whole ecosystem which is really dependent on the fuel that you don't have, and which is internationally really expensive. If gas were priced at what it was valued at internationally, your grid would have looked a lot different. And I think this is a problem which we also see in a number of other regional countries. So energy prices have to really be dictated by market realities. You cannot price certain fuels at a artificially low level. It will cause problems. It already is doing so. If subsidies have to be given out, they can be given directly in a transparent manner. But at least, price is a signal. It allows us to allocate resources better at a systemic level. You mess up with that signal, you end up with a problem later. So I would say that start dealing with the subsidies first for natural gas prices, for electricity prices, and I think that is
Get
something.
the economy accelerated
I think that
first.
will lead to some of the distortions being corrected, and yes, the economy, of course, needs to be brought on the road to recovery as well.
Yeah.
I say,
Ye-
Paulo,
yeah. Well.
your take.
Now we are
You
getting
agree with Amit?
closer. We are getting to closer in terms of opinions. Starting with, of course, the issue of the batteries. That is much more complex than the question of the panels. By the way, of course, more complicated. I mean, I do not have the negative view of Amit, because even the batteries, the way that they have been progressing, is been outstanding, and there are loads of other solutions that have been not only futuristic. I mean, real ones. I mean, look at the market, for instance, my own country. Look now in the winter to the market of electricity. For a lot of time of days, Portugal had the lowest energy prices all over Europe. Why? For a very simple reason, because we are using a very old technique of batteries, which is the water. You have a dam. When you have too much energy available, like sun or wind or whatever, you just pump the water upwards, and then you need it.
Oh, you pump it
Okay, and then you
upwards and
let it
use it
flow.
as a reservoir,
Absolutely,
basically,
it's not
and
futuristic.
a battery.
This is not futuristic. This has been happening in January and February 2025. Just to give you an example.
Using the same water for hydropower.
Exactly. The hydropower is the battery, and this is used in, well, for instance, in Switzerland, that is a major, but Portugal as well. Portugal is not very gifted in terms of what. Portugal is not Nepal. I mean, I've never seen in my life
That's
nothing like
very
Nepal.
interesting. I wish I
Yeah,
had some photos to show.
come
And
on, come on. This is, I mean, we have to look at these issues.
yeah, yeah,
These are present day issues. Okay, let me
I
go
would
to the issue
request.
of the subsidies, because I subscribe entirely to what Amit said. Said there, finally, we are in agreement. Fundamentally, I am against all these sort of subventions, be it for gas, be it for the so-called renewable energies. That's the same thing. We are just building, artificial, non-sustainable clientelism. My view is that we have to act on another sphere, which is exactly research. Some of the things are fundamental research, but some of them are not fundamental research, are development and demonstration. I saw that in my farm. Most of the things are very obvious, very simple, but you have to be there, you have to be in the
Paulo,
village to see how you do it.
there are two terms like energy realist and energy humanist. How do you define yourself? I think we know the answer.
No, no, I'm humanist in everything.
Oh, well, you are. You are both
I
actually,
am a humanist.
but in
I
terms
am,
of energy,
regarding energy or whatever, I am a humanist. That's what I think it matters for me. It's the human beings, be them Bangladeshis, being them whatever they are. Couldn't care less. I mean, human beings is really the ancient sophist philosophers was saying, the human being is the measure of everything else in the
no,
world.
thank you very much. Just curious, Amit, how do you describe yourself? Energy. I'm asking the same question to you.
I
Energy
mean,
realist
I think it has to be
or a
both, right?
humanist?
If you are a humanist, you have to be realist. As a humanist, you assume
Oh,
that
that's an interesting take.
everyone needs
That's,
cheap
that's an
and adequate
interesting take.
energy. And if you talk about cheap and adequate energy, then it has to come from what can be afforded and what is possible today, not what will be.
That's a great answer. Well, we have issues that to tackle the challenge of balancing economic growth with energy sustainability. I think we are all on the same page on that. We discussed very briefly the energy subsidies and the pricing issues. I'm not sure if we have time to get into but subsidies themselves are very politicized, in particular in Bangladesh. And that's why I actually mentioned Bretton Woods, not just in domestically, but internationally, it is an issue. And many of Bangladesh's policy are often very much tied to the Bretton Woods influence. I'm not sure if we can get into that. I wish we had more time. But there was something very interesting I actually wanted to discuss with you. And before we run out of time, I need your opinion very quickly before we run out of time. Say you were advising the policymakers of Bangladesh. What are the three most urgent reforms of Bangladesh in the energy sector that you would advise in order to secure energy supply or make it sustainable, or make it also not just sustainable for present but also resilient for future? What would be your three advices? Anyone, please pick up.
Well, my first advice would be to get to the internet again, the renewable energy plan of Sheikh Hasina government that was taken out, was destroyed, was disappeared by these UNOS authorities. Put it up, number one. Number two, discuss with credible partners, and I think American. And of course, India is always a must for all reasons, and Nepal and so on. How to remodel it? Well, three. Perhaps I would go exactly like Amit. I mean, finish all this idea of subventions to energy consumption. They are deadly. They, in the long run, they bankrupt your country, and this is a problem for whomever. Sheikh Hasina's government, the one preceding. Never mind. This is fundamental.
The third point is to have a credible partner. And your first point was protect what you already
No, no,
have.
no. Get into the limelight again the 2040 plan for 100% renewable energy. That was the number one. The number two was the
You mean
partnerships.
2040 or 2042? You were referring.
I am quoting the American authorities because
Okay.
they said 2040. I'm not sure because the Yunus
No, no, no.
maybe
I'm hazy
disappeared.
with numbers as well. Yeah.
It's not
Okay.
there any longer. You don't have to know what it was because they just destroyed it. Okay, it
Well,
must be somewhere.
some very interesting suggestions. Amit, what would be yours? You
So
are
I
the
would say,
advisor.
yeah. So I would say one, Bangladesh has to get rid of multiple distortions. One distortion is in subsidies. The second distortion you have is on your exchange rates. I believe that the exchange rate of your currency doesn't accurately represent its value. And because of that, again, you are not pricing energy correctly. Both of these will have to be done. Bangladesh will have to buy electricity from India in the short run. There is no other option. It will be much cheaper than anything that you can generate from imported LNG or imported liquid petroleum fuels. So this is something which the government will have to politically, it will be a political pill for the government to swallow. But this energy will have to be purchased from India. That's the cheapest option. I think in the longer run, greater connectivity within the region can be explored.
So you are moving to your second advice, right? The first to remove the distortions, and the
Remove
second
distortions.
the purchase.
Second is patch up with India, because there is no other way. You will need massive amounts of electricity in the short run, and Bangladesh is not really in a position financially to put up thermal power on its own.
Okay.
India is going
So
to be adding.
that is about partnership,
That is about
basically.
partnership. So you have to, the partnership with India has to be revived. And I think the third would be to look at greater connectivity within the region with Nepal and to a certain extent Bhutan as well. So, the 40 megawatt deal can be a little larger. So that's what I would suggest.
Great answer. I think we have
Bhutan,
reached the
very
end
good.
of our program. As we wrap up today's discussion, it's clear that Bangladesh's energy future is at a crossroads now. So the balance between securing energy independence, embracing sustainable alternatives, and navigating geopolitical challenges will obviously shape the trajectory in the years to come. It's not an issue of present, but it is also an issue of the future. So Amit Bhandari, Paulo, Casaca, thank you both for your invaluable insights. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I learned a lot from you both. And I'm sure our listeners have gained a lot from your expertise. To our audience, I have a request. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That would help us take these discussions to more people. And of course, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care and stay informed. This is Rayhan Rashid signing off.
Thank you.